you for the introduction. Um, are you hearing me or is my
Yes,
mic
you're audible po.
configured properly? Okay. And you're seeing my screen, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you for that introduction. Yeah, as they said, I'm gonna be talking about, or I'm gonna be introducing you to Rust, and yeah, I hope you learn something from this. I'm not gonna say that you will be able to, I mean, write in Rust right away, like after this talk, right? Like it's just not, I know it's just not realistic. But I'm gonna try my best to, like, convince you to try out Rust and start learning it. Okay. And yeah, before I go with, before I officially start the talk, I want to give you an overview about how I structured this talk. First, I'm gonna talk about some history and some facts about Rust, and I'm also gonna point out some arguments and reasons why you might want to start learning Rust. And then next, I'm gonna be talking about my relationship with Rust, like how I came across Rust and how am I currently using it. And then finally, I'm gonna be talking about quirks, right? Not the My Hero Academia thing, guys, but I'm gonna be talking about language features that I think are unique to the Rust programming language. So with that out of the way, I'm gonna start with this. What is Rust? Rust started as a personal project by Graydon Hoare in 2006, and Graydon Hoare at the time was working at Mozilla, and Mozilla took notice, and in 2009, Mozilla started sponsoring Graydon Hoare's personal project, and Mozilla gave Graydon Hoare a team of engineers to continue development of Rust, and in 2010, the first version was released. Rust is a general purpose programming language with primary focus on performance. It is fundamentally a systems programming language, right? Although, I mean, since it's also a general purpose programming language, it can also wear many other hats, right? Like it can also be used, or it can even be used to write code that runs on the browser using via WebAssembly, right? Like you can write Rust code and use the WebAssembly compiler to compile it into WebASM, which then allows you to to run that code in the browser. Or you can also use Rust to like build GraphQL APIs if you do so, prefer. But but fundamentally, Rust is a systems programming language on par with other systems programming languages like C or C++. And and I think like the biggest, or like the most important attribute of Rust that the most important attribute of Rust is this: it achieves automatic memory management without the use of a garbage collector. For some, that might be that might not be like very familiar, but anyways, like most of the modern programming languages that we use nowadays, like Python, Node.js, or JavaScript, and Go programming language, or Java, right? Most of them are using a garbage collector too, so that the developer or the programmer doesn't have to worry about memory management anymore, right? With the garbage collector, the developer just needs to like allocate the memory space needed for a variable or for an object, and the programmer can forget about it, right? Because the garbage collector then, like in the background, checks whether the variable is still in use. If it's not in use, then it will deallocate it automatically. And that's what usually is happening now. So yeah, for languages like Python or Node or JavaScript, right? On the other extreme, right, like there are programming languages like C or C++ that I know that leaves the responsibility of managing memory into the developer. So the developer has to make sure that after he allocates the memory for a variable, he deallocates it somewhere in his code. Because if he forgets about it, then you would end up creating this code which allocates memory over time, and that's what we call memory leaks. And yeah, I mean, it gives a lot of responsibility to the developers. Um, Rust provides another option, right? Like it I mean, it automates memory management. It so that the developer doesn't have to worry about memory management anymore, and it achieves that without using a garbage collector. So yeah, I think that's the main selling point of Rust. And yeah, next I'm gonna be talking about some like example use cases for Rust. Um, since Rust is a systems programming language, it can be used to write operating systems. And yeah, there are now people doing just that. There's an operating system called Redux OS, which is entirely written in Rust. And for the same reason, being a systems programming language, Rust can also be used to build game engines. And I provided you this URL, which gives you a list of game engine related resources. And yeah, also Rust can be used to build software applications that manage the file system directly. We have as an example IndraDB, which is a graph database, and also it's entirely written in Rust. And yeah, of course, right? Like as I said earlier, Rust was sponsored by Mozilla in its at the very early stages, and it's just makes sense that they would use Rust, right, in their flagship browser, the Firefox, right? So it's Rust is the one used to is what's used to build Stylo, the CSS engine of Firefox. And Rust can also be used for embedded systems, microcontroller systems, or yeah, any IoT applications. And networking applications, yeah, Rust is also very good at that. You can write firmware that can run on your routers, or you can also use Rust to build firewalls, right? Those firmwares or the software applications has to be very fast, has to be fast and has to be very efficient because they live in hardware that has very limited resources. And Rust is very good at those kinds of situations. And yeah, I already mentioned this earlier. You can via web assembly, you can write code written in Rust that can run on the browser. Let's say you are building this like software application which provides end-to-end encryption, right? So that means yung encryption and decryption has to happen on the browser on the front end. And we probably don't want JavaScript to handle it because yeah, since JavaScript it's known to be very inefficient and not good at compute intensive operations. And so yeah, we might want to decide to use Rust for that. And yeah, via WebAssembly, make it so that it works on the browser. Okay. And next, let me talk about some pros, right? Like some benefits that you might get out of using Rust. First, of course, yeah, since it's a systems programming language, you get great performance. The software applications written in Rust are guaranteed to provide you with as much or even better performance than applications that are written in C or C++. You just can't compare it to software applications that you write in Go or in Node.js, right? Like, I mean, there's just no comparison. It's a night and day. And memory safety and thread safety, right? So unlike C or C++, where memory safety and thread safety is really the responsibility of managing them is really up to the developer. The Rust provides you with that. Yeah, with the developer not worrying about it. And yeah, while not needing a garbage collector. And of course, yeah, no garbage collector. Yeah, like depending on how you see it, like you can treat this as an advantage because I mean, I'm not saying that garbage collector is bad, right? Like it's actually great because it it provides memory safety and thread safety without the user having to worry about the allocation and stuff, right? But garbage collector can incur some very heavy performance penalties. And yeah, Rust manages to maintain memory safety and thread safety without needing a garbage collector. Great concurrency support. Okay, the Go programming language has one of the best concurrency support that I've seen in a programming language, and Rust is catching up. Actually, like a lot of concurrency concepts that came from the Go programming language was also implemented in Rust. So yeah, so I'm really loving the concurrency support in Rust. It's, in my opinion, it's even better in Node.js, and great documentation. So yeah, learning Rust is, I mean, I wouldn't say it's going to be easy, but but you're not going to have to look for, I mean, to the depths of a cave to find great resources. Yeah, the Rust community has provided us with a very well structured documentation. So it's definitely a plus, and great community, right? Like I know, in fact, Rust was consistently the most loved programming language by the Stack Overflow community in the last 5 years. Yeah, so that's shows how great the community is around it, and great tooling, right? So the people who built Rust has provided us with very good tools. Like there's a tool for formatting the code, and there's a great tool for providing the test harness, yeah, allowing you to write unit tests in Rust, and yeah, some tools to allow you to benchmark your Rust code in a very deterministic and very accurate way. And yeah, and then they also provided you with a package manager, or in the case of Rust, the crate manager, a cold cargo. Okay, cons. Of course, right? Like no programming language is it. I mean, Rust is not a silver bullet, so it also has some like negative sides. Steep learning curve. It really depends on where you came from. If you came from a background like that was concerned most on I mean, if you came from a background where you are dealing with systems programming, then instead of being learning Rust might not be as might not incur a steep learning curve for you, because yeah, but for most of us, like 90% of us who came from backgrounds um like programming backgrounds, like Python or Django, or JavaScript and Node.js, like once you start learning Rust, you will encounter a lot of things that you see for the first time, right? There's a number of new concepts in Rust. So that's why I'm saying that like compared to other programming language, Rust has a steeper learning curve, and Rust is relatively young. And yeah, so just by that attribute, like you can, I mean, being relatively young means that if you there's a very high likelihood of you having to write the entirety of the code yourself, instead of relying on open source software that were built for people, because they just didn't exist yet, right? The open source community around Rust is still growing, and it's growing fast, but it's still not at the stage where you can. I mean, you can't compare it to Node.js's environment, right? Like most of the problem that you try to solve, like you could like almost 100% would find like a package that solves the same problem as yours, and they have no, the npm registry, which is great. Rust is not at that state just yet. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay, so then how do you get started? uh, of course you have to install Rust, right? Like if you are running Debian operating system, then you just run this command directly. What this does is, of course, install Rust. It also it installs the Rust compiler. It also installs the other tools like the Rust formatter that I talked to you about, and it also installs Cargo, which is like the npm equivalent for Rust. And yeah, after you've installed Rust, then you just run this command cargo new world, and yeah, it will then generate the boilerplate code, and it will generate this like very cliche code for for writing a hello world message on the command line. Okay, my next let's proceed to the next part of my relationship with Rust. um okay, so before I proceed with that, like let me give I want to give you some disclaimer first. I mean, I don't really consider myself an expert in Rust, right? Like I've only recently started using it in my day job. And honestly, like I see myself within the beginner and the intermediate level range. Even so, like I feel like I've accumulated enough experience to be able to um talk to you about what what you can expect if you start learning Rust. Yeah, so that's that. And okay, so let me continue with this. So I came across Rust like roughly 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, yeah, it was a buzz up. It was like it was all over the place, right? I mean, like it's I mean, like if you are a developer, it's very impossible to not notice Rust. Like it was because especially Stack Overflow, right? Like they have these a survey, and it turned out that Rust was the most loved programming language there. And I got curious and I started learning it. I was learning it like on and off. I was doing code wars and stuff. Just learning the basics of Rust programming language. But only recently where I really started using it in my day job, and and I think that it's only very recently where where I can say that I've gained like like the large chunk of the learnings needed to be able to start using Rust effectively.